Is it working? The volume is working there. You sure? You're the wizard. We just follow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. All right. You might see me having a mic on my mouth, but you won't even hear the. There you go. See? So you won't hear the echo in the masjid, but because for those who are watching online or those who want to go back and revisit the class again, then they can hear it clearly. Am I correct? As I said, my man over there, Mahdi, is the wizard. He watches a lot of Harry Potter, that's why. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina wa habibina khatamil anbiya'i wal mursaleen Muhammad ibn Abdullah alayhi min rabbihi afdalu salati wa atammu taslim wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'in wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin amma ba'du رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم ابسط علينا رحمتك وانشر علينا من حكمتك وافتح لنا فتوح العارفين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم آمين يا رب العالمين. Inshallah ta'ala, today we're going to continue with Salah as we did in our previous class in the obligations of Salah. We're going to look at the sunan of Salah, the sunnah acts of Salah today, inshallah. And you might think that the fara'id, or maybe the obligations of Salah, is pretty dense, but actually no. The sunan of Salah, as it fills in the necessary parts of Salah, is more dense than the obligations of Salah. The obligations of Salah are pretty straightforward. You know, you have to do takbiratul ihram. You commence with your salah, and then you read your Fatiha. You must do that, and then you have a ruku', and then you have to get out of ruku', which is standing back up again, going down to sujood, and then sitting between the two sujoods. You must get out of the sujood, doing another sujood, standing up, and that's how you do it. And the last thing, as we said, for a salah which has a salam, you sit down, and then you have to say as-salamu, and nothing else other than that. If you say Salamu alaykum, no. Salamun alaykum, no. It's as-salam, you must say that. And we said which salah does not have a salam? It doesn't have a sujood in it. Which salah doesn't have a sujood in it? Janaza. Barakallahu feekum. Salatul janaza doesn't have a sujood. So if you go back to the definition, we said it's qurbatun fi'liyah. It is a deed which requires actions that draws you close to Allah. And we said among the actions, if you look at the function of the body, there are three types. Which number one is, for those who are here? Number one is harakatul lisan, the tongue. Number two is the heart. Number three is the limbs. The heart, we said, is the intention you make. The tongue are the surahs and the dua that you do in salah. And then the movement of the limbs are, for example, the sujood and ruku' and the takbirah that you do, inshallah. Does that make sense? And then we mentioned the process of how to do your salah in a fard manner. Why so? It's so that, mathalan, I use this example a lot, which is the easiest and the fastest example any person who is a student of fiqh that teaches and simplifies it can give and think of. And that is for you to know the difference between a fard act of a deed from the sunnah act. It makes it extremely simple to a level إذا ضاق الوقت, if your time has become very, very short and you want to fulfill your salah, you only do the fards of what's needed, such as wudu and salah. Does that make sense? But if you don't know the difference, you end up wasting time and miss the salah. Does that make sense? And this majority of the times, women are a victim of it. Because, for example, women who have come out of postnatal cycle or maybe menstrual cycles and that, sometimes they find out that they are in a state of tahara quite late. And in the madhab, as we know, if, for example, you found yourself clean, you're in a state of purity, and let's say you have about 15 minutes to Maghrib. In those 15 minutes, she has to quickly shower for 5 minutes, get herself ready, and whatever minutes are left, if it's 8, she has to pray her dhuhr first, then pray her asr. How would she catch asr if she has to pray dhuhr and she only has about 8 to 6 minutes maybe? You need to meet at least a raka'ah in the time. If the muallif would cover the issue related to timings of salah, we're going to look at it. If not, we're not going to delve into it. Understood? Because there are a lot of masail related to this. However, simply put, if you've missed Salat al-Dhuhr, mathalan, you have a valid excuse, and then you have to pray it with Asr, and it's Asr time, and that Asr time as well is coming to an end. You only have 10 minutes to Maghrib. You just entered the masjid. You want to go do wudu. By the time you finish wudu, you're left with 7 minutes. Do your dhuhr, start praying your asr at least before the entrance of Maghrib time, and get a rak'ah of asr. Does that make sense? Get a rak'ah of asr. So you meet the salah itself. Now, how do the sunan play a role, a huge role in salah? And what's the difference between the sunan of salah and the sunan of wudu? A sunnah of wudu, if you do not do it, it's recommended to return back to the wudu area and repeat it. لكن هل سنن من سنن الوضوء تبطل صلاتك? Does it make your salah to become invalid? No. Understood? It's recommended to go back. الإعادة ندبا وليس أبدا. We said that there's a difference. For those who want to write this down, الإعادة أبدا. Al-i'adatu abadan, it means you must go back, otherwise your salah or whatever you're doing of your deed is invalid. Understood? It's like a person who is taking ghusl or maybe doing wudu. They washed every part that's needed for the wudu or ghusl, but then they forgot one limb. Let's say like one arm. As you forgot that, al-i'adatu abadan, you have to go back and complete that. Does that make sense? Al-i'adatu nadban is recommended to return and do what you are supposed to do. Otherwise, it will be okay. So don't worry about that. Now, coming to the sunnah of salah. What if I miss a sunnah? Now, if I miss a sunnah, there's the fada'il of salah, which is below a sunnah. We said normally, according to what you can see and how we're going to go, the easiest of what you can look at every deed, there are 3 levels. There's the obligations of the deed. There are the sunan of the deed, the sunnahs, and then there are the meritorious acts, which you are rewarded by doing them. What's the difference between the sunnahs of salah and the fada'il of salah? Are we clear on this? So the fada'il are below the sunnah. Always remember this. We have the fard, and then we have the sunnah, and then we have the fadila. Does that make sense? The faridah is the main. You miss that, everything is invalid. The sunnah fills in the faridah. If you miss it, what happens? And what is it as well? And then the fadila is below the sunnah. But with all of them, the salah or the deed is complete. Does that make sense? خير إن شاء الله. Now, sunan الصلاة. فيقول المصنف رحمه الله تعالى نفعنا الله به وبعلومه في الدارين والله في العلم. With the ilm you find a lot of solace. قال وأما سنن الصلاة فإثنتا عشر. فيقول صاحب أسهل المسالك. صاحب أسهل المسالك, what does he say? فقل no فيها نقول 8 عدة المسنون. That is on wudu. سننها فسنن الصلاة 12. SubhanAllah, I had these lines just 10 minutes ago and they ran away. And I literally had them with me when I was writing one of these notes. Al-Muhim, he's mentioning that in Sahib Ashal al-Masalik, he's saying that فَسُورَةٌ فِي الرَّكَعَتَيْنِ الْأُوَّلِ, you have to know the 12 sunnahs of salah. And in this book, he confirms it by saying there are 12 sunnahs of salah. Understood? No. مسنونها ثلاث عشر فانقلي. He says 13. مسنونها ثلاث عشر فانقلي فسورة في الركعتين الأول وسمع الله لمن له حمد للفذ للإمام وحده والمنفرد. Different from the beginning. Now these are just my lines. You don't have to memorize them. Does that make sense? He starts explaining now the sunan of salah. Over here he says 12. Over there he says 13. Does that make sense? But what we will take from there is the 13. But as it's a beginner text, we're going to take the 12 from this. The one that you might not find shouldn't give you a headache. Does that make sense? It shouldn't give you a headache, inshallah. وَأَمَّا سُنَنُ الصَّلَاةِ فَإِثْنَةَ عَشَرُ. The sunan of salah, they are 12. Boys, listen carefully. Because when you come to do your wudu or your salah, you do not differentiate between what you are doing. What happens is that you find yourself in a dilemma if you're asked to do something quickly and ignore the sunnah because you don't have time. You end up doing a sunnah thinking it's a fard. As I asked a student once, is tamadmud, rinsing your mouth, gargling water, is it regarded as a sunnah or a fard? The student told me it's a fard. But because they did not pay attention in class to know that it's a sunnah, and they thought it's a fard, while doing wudu, they will be wasting time unnecessarily. Does that make sense? So the first one he says, Al-Ula, As-Suratu Ba'da Al-Fatihati fi Al-Raka'ati Al-Ula wa Thaniya. That's why we said, Fasuratun fi Al-Raka'atayn Al-Uwali. You have to read a surah after the first two rak'ahs when you read Fatiha. When you finish reading Fatiha in the first two rak'ahs of your salah, okay, you must read a surah. Which salah do you read a surah from the beginning to the end after the Fatiha? No. We're talking about obligatory salah. Which salah from the beginning to the end you must read a surah? Huh? That's simple. Should it really be? Are you questioning or are you asking? It's Fajr. How many rak'ah does Fajr have? 2. So should you read the surah in 2 or not? You should. Understood? You should. It's as simple as that. So he says, As-suratu ba'da al-fatihati fi al-rak'ati al-ula wa al-thaniya lil-fadhi wal-imami. What does that mean? Lil-fadhi wal-imami, you might not find it in the text, you'll find it in the sharh. It means the one who is praying alone and the imam that's leading the salah. What about the ma'mum? The one who is being led with the imam. We said that ثانيها قراءة بالحمد. Isn't it? للإمام وحده والفرد. Who recites the Fatiha from all of the types of people that pray? There's the imam, and then there's the ma'mum, and then there's the one who prays alone. Isn't it? Who reads the Fatiha? If you remember carefully. The imam reads the Fatiha, and the one who is praying alone reads the Fatiha. Is the ma'mum required to read the Fatiha? No. No. You are not required to read the Fatiha. The imam takes over. So if you even recite the Fatiha as the imam has finished reciting the Fatiha, and you're interrupted by the imam while he's reading out loud for Salatul Maghrib, for Salatul Isha, for Salatul Asr as well. Does the imam read out loud for Salatul Asr? Good. Good, mashallah. He doesn't read out loud. He reads for Salatul Subh as well, isn't it? Which is Salatul Fajr, as it is known. As the imam reads out loud, you stop reading or reciting, you let the imam do the recitation. Okay? So you're not obliged to read the Fatiha. Now when it comes to the surah as well, the same applies. You do not have to read the surah. Only if you're praying alone or the imam is leading salah. Because the imam carries, يَحْمِلُهُ إِمَامُهُ مِنْ سُنَّةِ. Does that make sense? The imam is the one that carries the burden of the ma'mum. So I don't think this post is easy. Standing over here, the moment you remember that you've literally invalidated your wudu, or you do not have wudu, or you've literally ruined a rak'ah, you literally have to tell the ma'mum that I made a mistake, maybe we have to pray again. I promise you the ma'mum will leave and go pray alone. That's how impatient we are. So the ma'mum need to understand the severity of the salah and the position the imam is in, so that you may have some mercy for the imam. Does that make sense? And another thing is, on the front line, not everyone should line up. On the middle part of the line, there must be at least 2 huffaz who are fuqaha. Not just a hafiz, but at least a faqih, who understands fiqh to a certain extent, at least fiqh of salah, at the bare minimum. So that if the imam makes a mistake, he knows what to do. Because we mentioned among the obligations of salah is intention. أليس كذلك? Now niyyah, we said that there are several types of it. There's the niyyah of the fadh who is praying alone. There's the niyyah of the ma'moom who he has to make the niyyah as a ma'moom. And bima'na ta'yinun niyyah is to specify the niyyah. And there's the niyyah of the imam that he has to specify his intention as the imam. But then what if the imam, his salah is invalidated because of either losing his wudu, or he remembered he doesn't have wudu, or something happened, he has to leave, and there's someone else behind him that can take over his position? That person which is already as a ma'moom, what happens to his intention? It changes. Now does he have his intention change automatically, or does he have to manually change it? Automatically or manually? Manually. What does manual mean? Make the niyyah himself, isn't it? Automatically means you enter, that's it, is changed. So you don't do automatically. You make it intentionally, manually. As you change positions, immediately what should you say? I'm an imam now. I take the niyyah of the imam. So you become an imam. You say in your head. You don't say out loud. You don't say out loud. إلا عند الشافعية, to the Shafi'iyya, التلفظ بها sunnah. It's a sunnah to announce it. Although some sects, they have a go at that. Very hard. They pick what they can have a hand on. They bash it, attack it, and then when they lose the battle, that's it. They come up with excuses. But they have a very strong hujjah to say why you have to say it out loud, and it is necessary when it's needed. We said the person who utters the niyyah, according to the madhab, is what? The one who has chronic doubt. They've made the intention or not. If this person has chronic doubt and they're constantly worrying, what do? They have to now utter it so they can literally hear it and confirm that they made the intention. Can someone close the door? But they're going to make a lot of noise and throw the tables around. Alright, so as-surah ba'da al-Fatiha fi al-rak'ati al-ula wa al-thaniya. So you only read the surah in the first rak'ah and the second rak'ah. Does that make sense? In the first rak'ah and the second rak'ah. For the fadh, the one who's praying alone, and the imam. For the ma'moom, as bil-iqtisar, we've mentioned that, khalas. Now when it comes to surah, that's another issue now. That's why I told you sunan is quite dense. The surah mentioned, is it the whole surah, or do you read a piece of a verse?
Is it at least one ayah?
At least one ayah, yes. At least one ayah. And what type of ayah? العلماء يقولون كمدهامتان. There's a verse in Surah Al-Rahman that says مدهامتان. That's an ayah. How many letters? Mim, dal, ha, alif, double mim again, and then ta, alif, and nun. That's approximately nearly 10 letters, khalas. Mudhammatan, you do ruku'. I remember there was a silly student once. He was leading salah, but because he wanted to have a go at his teachers, on the first rak'ah, and I remember, if I do recall, it was Surah Al-Maghrib. He read from Surah Al-Muddathir after Fatiha, thumma nadhar, and then he did ruku'. On the second rak'ah, he read the whole Kahf. Can you hear me clearly? The first rak'ah, he read thumma nadhar. Literally, thumma nadhar. Second rak'ah, he started from the beginning of Surah Al-Kahf to the end of it. But he did not stay in boarding school. He ran away, actually.
What's the problem?
No. There's not a problem. It's when you're a kid what happens.
No. I'm saying, what's the problem with reading?
Oh, there is a big problem.
That and reading.
First of all, that is tankis. Tankis is to literally do the opposite of what you're required to do. The first rak'ah has to be longer than the second rak'ah, isn't it? And then on top of that, what you've done is you've read a long surah in the salah which you're required to read a short surah. And the third thing, you've literally hurt every single Muslim in the masjid.
He's a student.
No, he did it on purpose.
And what you just said with regards to from another.
Yes. Yes,
Does it mean
it's not like mudhammatan.
it's not
But the reason why the scholars say mudhammatan is because even if, for example, thumma nadhar is shorter than mudhammatan, but mudhammatan is one word in one verse. Does that make sense? One word in one verse. So even if it's only that you've memorized, mudhammatan, imagine a Muslim just embraced Islam, they memorize Fatiha and that, they can constantly keep on repeating that. Although it is makruh to repeat the same surah over and over again. Understood? It is disliked to repeat the same surah in the salah over and over again, especially in the same rak'ah. In the same rak'ah, you read salah, you read Qul huwallahu ahad to the end, and then you repeat again, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Qul huwallahu ahad. Even the ma'mum will be annoyed. In the same salah, yeah. Whether first rak'ah or second rak'ah. Because that will be more or less like a ruqya session, not a salah anymore.
But isn't there a hadith that says the Prophet recited Surah Al-Zalzala in the first and the second rak'ah?
But the question is, how common is it?
You know, I'm just saying, but
No, how common is it?
it's not very. But then, who would you say is makruh if, say, someone had come across that hadith, and for Salat al-Maghrib he wanted to recite.
But then,
Zalzala
if
and
you,
Zalzala.
yes,
And
you've
then-
come
and
across,
people might read it like-
and I'll ask you this though, we've come across a hadith, but how do you know the authenticity of the hadith? How far have you followed? And not every hadith that you might find in Bukhari, mathalan, is accepted in the Muwatta. Does that make sense? فأهل الحديث يعرفون بهذا العلم. For the people of hadith, they understand the ilm properly. So if we come across the hadith, we can't just use it because it's a hadith. It ends up ruining the thing that we are supposed to do. Do you get what I mean? Because if we do follow hadith and Quran straight away, especially in this time that we have, will be lost immediately. Ilm today, you know how we learn it? We don't learn it by starting with Quran and Sunnah. That was the methodology then. But now it's the reverse. You start from where they finished, concluded, the ulama, and then you go all the way to the actual sources. You begin from the conclusion all the way to the introduction. You can't start from the introduction to the conclusion, because the introduction itself is what built the conclusion. So in order to understand, you need to start from, for example, like if you're studying, let's say fiqh, or you're studying tafsir and that, in order to be a mufassir, all your Arabic has to be something else. Yesterday night, I was talking to my teacher, and I said, I would tell you personally what I said. Sheikh, I believe the usuliyun, the ones who literally control the understanding of hadith and Quran and that, and these sources, the primary sources of law in Islamic law, Sharia, they are the ones that control the Arabic language. He told me, actually, you're wrong. Who control the Arabic language? He told me, the grammarians. Al-Kisaiyu, Al-Imam Al-Kisai, who recites in Surah Al-Mulk, we say min tafawut, he says min tafawut. Warsh, for example, he would say, what example can I use? وَمَا أَنسَانِهِ. While in Hafs you say وَمَا أَنسَانِهُ. Does that make sense? أَنسَانِهُ. In Warsh you say وَمَا أَنسَانِهِ. What caused the difference? Grammar. Literally, grammarians have the upper hand when it comes to the entire religion. A muhaddith needs grammar. A Quran person needs grammar. A faqih needs grammar. And the ulama say, you would forever be a follower, a muqallid. You just follow along and tag along, no matter how much you've studied, if your Arabic is nothing. Even if you've studied literally a little bit of Arabic and you say you know Arabic, no, it's not enough. You have to be a king in Arabic. If you look at Imam al-Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam al-Suyuti was able to claim that he has his own madhab. While his madhab, whatever, assalamu rahmatullah, marhaban, any opinion that he came close to, 90% of the time he fell into the Shafi'i madhab. He wasn't able to come up with his own madhab. Lakin, what gave him that jur'ah? Why? It's because he has his own maqamat. What is maqamat? It's an Arabic literature book, like Maqamat al-Hariri, the literature book in Arabic by al-Hariri, who wrote that. As-Suyuti has his own one. If I'm not wrong, if it's As-Suyuti, yes, I believe so, is, yeah. He has his own one. In order for you to write that book, your Arabic it's not simple Arabic, habibi. The steps that you go through until you get there, we نقرأ الكتاب لنفهم الكتاب. The ulama of Nahu say that. We read the book, which is the Kitab of Sibawayh, so that we can understand the book, which is the Quran. Does that make sense? And not only that, for example, like ilm al-hadith, once you understand Arabic, then the next thing you need to know the silsila of rijal, the chain of narrations, how it starts. And then you need to know, how does it flow? Where does the hadith stand? Is the matn sahih? Is the matn not sahih? Is the chain authentic or not? And they say the golden chain is that which goes from Al-Imam Malik, then Nafi, then Abdullah ibn Umar, then Umar ibn Khattab, then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the golden chain. You have that chain, khalas. You don't question the hadith. But where would you find that? In Al-Muwatta. And you find that some hadith in Al-Muwatta literally differs from the hadith that you find in Sahih al-Bukhari. So it becomes very difficult for us to say that if we find the hadith and then it's enough, it becomes very, very, it's a very, very critical issue that we have to look into, inshallah. But if we say the takrirat of, for example, مثلا now, to repeat the same surah again and again, وكذا يكره تكرارها في كل ركعة بأن يقرأ في الركعة الواحدة وهذا كل راجع لأصل الكلام من سنية السورة. What was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ of how he did it? He would read a surah which is above the surah that he will read in the second rak'ah. That is how he did it. Does that make sense? Because all of the ahadith which point towards that are the most authentic and the correct ones, without a shadow of a doubt, inshallah. Yes, the sunnah is to read a surah which is higher than the surah that you're going to read in the second rak'ah. The first rak'ah, let's say mathalan, if you read قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ, then don't read the surah that is before it, like تَبَّتْ يَدَ أَبِي لَهَبٍ وَتَبٍّ. You read قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. Yeah, that's what I mentioned to you 4 mistakes, violations that he made. One of them, he read a surah which is lower than Surah Al-Kahf. Second of all, he read in the first rak'ah a very short surah compared to the second rak'ah, number 2. Number 3, he literally annoyed all of the Muslimin in the masjid. Those are 3 enough. And number 4, I forgot exactly what I mentioned. Number 4, he ran over. Okay, we've literally been stuck in that one thing. Number 2, الثانية, السنة الثانية, القيام لها. It is to stand for it. That's simple. We don't need to explain that. والثالثة, السر فيما يسر فيه. That's number 3. And number 4 is الجهر فيما يجهر فيه. Understood? Those are 2 together, number 3 and 4. Now, why are we bringing them together? Because this is how it translates it. As-sirru, to recite silently, fima yusarru fihi, that which you recite silently in. For example, a salah that you have to read quietly is such as Salatul Fajr. Yes? Nod or shake your head. Salatul Fajr? No. Salatul Dhuhr? Yes. Salatul Asr? Salatul Maghrib? Yes. Salatul Isha? Half. That's a good one. Would you forget your question? No. All right. So asirru fi ma yusarru fi. Aisha is literally very soon anyways. because the questions are more than the lesson itself. You read silently where you're supposed to read silently. And you have to read aloud, jahran, where you're supposed to read out loud. Now, does this apply to the imam alone? No. This applies even to the one who is praying alone. And also applies to the ma'moom. But how? How does it apply to the ma'moom? It applies to the ma'moom whom literally they entered salah, yes, got the imam, but they missed a rak'ah or two, or maybe nearly all of them. Not all of them, nearly all of them. Now this is something else. Who is a ma'moom? Man al-ma'moom. Barakallahu fiikum. The ma'moom is the one that caught the imam in at least a rak'ah. Because the issue of salam is going to come by. The issue of salam is going to come. If a person entered into salah in the last rak'ah and they did not catch the imam in ruku', they caught the imam in sujood. Simply put, they caught the imam in sujood. MashaAllah, this masjid puts on the heater on times when they want. They put the heaters off when they want. Because at the moment it's really cold. Barakallahu fiikum. What if this person, he entered into salah, he met the imam, isn't it, in sujood, didn't he? He got at least a portion of the salah, even if it's 10% or maybe 5%. But do we call him a ma'moom? We can't call him a ma'moom because he has not locked in a raka'ah with the imam. Now, how does he do his salam? In our madhab, the Maliki madhab is different. It's not 2 salams alone, and it's enough. There's a position where you can do 3 salams. That's new to everyone. For those who are wondering, we'll come to that inshallah.
So that means that if you
Don't forget your question. So as-subh, and we said, and also the maghrib salah, and also the isha. These, the first subh has 2 rak'at anyways. Maghrib the first 2, and isha the first 2. In those, you recite out loud. And all of the rest, remaining rak'at in other salahs, and even in these salahs, you recite them silently. Each one of us know that. But what do we classify as silent, and what do we classify as loud? Isn't it? Jahran. What is sirran, what is jahran? Mathalan. The ulama have levels. They've explained it to us. And if you look at the hashia, you notice they had a debate on this, of how they literally put it together. But beautifully enough, they said, and provided that, when it comes to the quiet salah, the lowest of it, how quiet you can be, basically, is you being able to hear yourself. That's how quiet. It's like, for example, telling a child, be quiet. They're not listening. Be quiet. They're not listening. All of us, for those who have experienced that and for those who are still experiencing that, who have young children. So when they start talking to you up silently, the voice you hear is, Baba. Isn't it? So when you're reciting in salah, the lowest of how loud you can be, when you're reading out silently, is Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. You can hear yourself. But what's the highest level of silence? It's when you're just moving your tongue and your lips. Barakallahu fiqh. We said in the previous class, among the way of recitation, the methodology of reciting, if for example you're gonna recite on your own, if you're praying on your own mathalan, or maybe you've missed some raka'at as the ma'moom, such as so, it's not just the harakatul lisan wal shafatan, and the 2 lips as well. They have to move. So it's not enough to be classified as you're reciting. Does that make sense? You're not regarded as reciting in salah if you're just using your tongue. You must use your lips as well. And this also helps with attentiveness. If you just use your tongue, majority of the times your mind is elsewhere and you're so used to the ritual, you go up, down, you recited Fatiha, then you start doubting, did I do the Fatiha or not? Did I do the sujood or not? Did I do the tashahud or not? A lot of mashakil come up. Does that make sense? So the lowest of silence you can have is Alhamdulillah, mathalan. And the highest volume of your silence is when you're just using and moving your tongue and your lips. Now, when it comes to reciting out loud, it's like this. The highest voice you can raise is not the annoying voice where you start to yell in the masjid. No. Or maybe you start waking up your entire house. But you read out loud enough where you don't even have to worry listening to yourself. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. That's your voice. And the lowest is the highest when you recite out silently. Does that make sense? The lowest of when you recite out loud is the highest of when you recite silently. How do you do that? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? It's simple. So if you're supposed to read out aloud and you literally just move your tongue and your lips but you weren't able to hear yourself, it is counted as if you did not raise your voice. Is that clear? That's very clear, isn't it? And if you do opposites of this, it becomes the wrong way. Now there's an issue, there's something that I want you to leave with and don't forget it. We said, because these are connected together, listen carefully. We said you have to read a surah after Fatiha. That's a sunnah, isn't it? You have to stand for the surah. That's another sunnah, isn't it? And then you either have to read out loud or silently for the same surah. So this surah, this rak'ah in itself, has 3 sunnahs tied what? Together. Don't forget that. I'll tell you why at the end. Although it's in a very late class, but we're going to bring it here inshallah ta'ala, so you can understand. If we do cover enough of that class, when we get there, we're just going to pass through. Does that make sense? Because those are things tied together at the moment as you move along, so you can understand why. What's the 5th sunnah? كل تكبيرة سنة إلا تكبيرة الإحرام فإنها فرض. Every takbirah is a sunnah except for takbiratul ihram. Now we have something called in the madhab, the ulama, they've given it its own definition. كل جميعي or كل مجموعي. Now if you study mantiq, logic, you'll end up understanding that why they differed. Is it كل جميعي or كل مجموعي? Basically, all the takbirat, do they fall under one umbrella? Or every takbir is a takbir individually? It's a sunnah individually. Does that make sense? So if you say, مثلا, I missed 2 takbirat in the first rak'ah, not the main takbirat. If you miss 2 takbirat, is it classified as just one sunnah or you've missed 2 takbirat separately? Does that make sense? But the sahih is every takbirah is a takbirah of its own merits. It stands on its own. Except for the main takbirah, which is takbiratul ihram. Takbiratul iftitah as-salah, the takbirah that you open salah with. Okay? That's the 5th sunnah. The 6th sunnah, it is Sami Allahu liman hamidah, for the imam and the one who is praying alone. It's that simple. And the ulama, if you look at the reason why we have Sami Allahu liman hamidah, they provide this, but I don't know how, at authenticity level, how high it is. Whether it's sahih, or it is hasan, or it is da'if. Like it's provided as one of those hadith. You can only call a hadith as not regarded completely if this hadith is regarded mawdu', not even munkar. If you study al-Bayquniyah, it provides you the levels of a hadith. Which is the hadith that you let go of completely? Completely. A mawdu' hadith. That's a totally fabricated hadith. But a munkar, the ulama as well have differed on this. While those who are very strict on hadith, they said let go of it. You don't look into it. But a da'if, it is taken but only on fada'ilul a'mal. On deeds that have merits, if you do them, you'll be rewarded on that. But when it comes to ahkam, when it comes to fiqh, when it comes to ibadah, no hadith will be accepted except for that which is sahih. Does that make sense? Especially main pillars of Islam. There's no questions, there's no ifs, there's no buts on this. You have to do it. It's a sahih hadith, a sahih hadith. Not sahih, push it aside. لذلك الإمام مالك رحمه الله تعالى, his students say, like Ibn al-Qasim al-Utaqi رحمه الله, or Ashhab, or Al-Asbagh, what do they say? They say that if Imam Malik was alive for a little bit longer in his life, for a decade, let's say, those ahadith which he collectively put together nearly 7,000 and reduced them to 1,000, he might have only been left with 500. Because of how he was literally churning off those ahadith, trying to make the book as authentic as it can be. Subhanallah. That's how strict they were with the primary sources of what? Of ibadah, of Islam itself. Does that make sense? I don't want to go into those. What do the ulama say in regards to Al-Imam al-Tirmidhi's sunan that he put together, and also what are the merits of it compared to Sahih al-Bukhari? What makes Al-Imam al-Tirmidhi unique and have the upper hand if compared to Bukhari? And what makes Al-Imam al-Bukhari have the upper hand beyond Al-Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala when it comes to, because every one of them have their own unique stances, and also on top of that, their levels of how they put together the ahadith. But the ulama say, whoever has a Sunan al-Tirmidhi in their home is as if they have the entire fiqh and the entire religion put together in their house. Does that make sense? So as a piece of advice, go look for it, buy it, keep it at home. Sami Allahu liman hamidah. So the Imam and the one who is who prays alone. We said that the reason why we have Sami Allahu liman hamidah, which is what I wanted to relate to you, and then in 5 minutes we'll stop. We're not going to finish them all, so that if you have your questions, you can offload them, inshallah, before you explode. Man هذا Abu Bakr رضي الله عنه, he always did not want to miss salah behind Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But one day he was pretty late. Maybe he forgot or he was busy with something and he was rushing to salah. As he enters, he didn't want to miss a rak'ah, not only salah alone. He finds Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in ruku', and then he said Alhamdulillah. Jibreel alayhi salam came down and told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the time for takbirah, for them coming out from ruku', they would only say Allahu Akbar like any other part of salah. He told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sami Allahu liman hamidah. Allah has heard the one who is saying Alhamdulillah. So when you get up, say Sami Allahu liman hamidah. And then another Sahaba, if I'm not wrong, Abu Bakr himself, he said Rabbana wa lakal hamd. And there is another narration saying that a Sahaba said Rabbana wa lakal hamd, and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked for him, and so and so. However, you notice that these Sahaba, for their reason, is exactly why we have a complete religion. Subhanallah. لذلك, all of the madhab, every single madhab, especially the 4 Sunni madhabs, they all agree after the Quran and the Sunnah is the ijma' of the Sahaba, the consensus of the Sahaba. Whoever denies it, even their faith has a problem. And this, no matter if a person is a Sufi, a Salafi, Deobandi, Naqshbandi, whatever we are, by our sects, no one denies that. It's the ijma' of the Sahaba. You don't accept it, the fiqh or maybe your understanding of the faith as well is distorted without a shadow of a doubt. Because if it wasn't for the Sahaba to be there for the mawaqi', we would never have what we have today. They are the ones that put this religion together for us. The Jam'ah of the Quran, who did it? At the time of Umar ibn Khattab, even at the time of Abu Bakr. If I'm not wrong, at the time of Abu Bakr it didn't happen. After that, at the time of Umar ibn Khattab onwards, especially at the time of Uthman, the Quran had to be put together. Who did that? Bless him. The Sahaba. Who put a hadith together? Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Anas ibn Malik, and so forth. If it wasn't for them, there wouldn't have been either a Malik ibn Anas. There wouldn't have been Abu Hanifa. There wouldn't have been Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i. There wouldn't have been Ahmad ibn Hanbal. They wouldn't have existed because they were the giants of a hadith, especially the 3 other than Al-Imam Abu Hanifa. We all know that. So the ijma' of the Sahaba is something we cannot ignore. So now you understand, number 6 is Sami Allahu liman hamidah, and then which is combined together with Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Lakin, Rabbana wa lakal hamd, who says it now? The ma'mum and the one who is praying alone, not the imam. The imam doesn't say Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Does that make sense? Because as the Imam says, Sami Allahu liman hamida, his duty is to wait for others to say, Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Why would he repeat Rabbana wa lakal hamd as well? And so basically I'll stop here. We'll keep it as number 7 is al-julus al-awwal, and number 8 is للزائد على قدر السلام من الجلوس الثاني, which is related to sitting down on that. رد المقتدي على إمامه السلام. We have, according to the text, we have about 5 to 4 more. Should we finish it? Because something, the mas'ala that I want to bring forth for you. Yalla, don't go anywhere. You stay. Neck don't want you at the moment. No, Neck don't want him at the moment. You're for us. He wants to run away. You stay. The 5 minutes you go. 5 more of these, sunnah. We're on number 7. Number 7 is al-julus al-awwal, which is the first sitting after the first rak'ah in the second rak'ah before you rise for the third rak'ah, except for Salatul Subh. Fajr prayer, the last rak'ah is the second rak'ah. So that sitting which you sit there is not a sunnah sitting anymore. It's part of the Fajr prayer. The rest of the other ones, there's the first sitting, is regarded as a sunnah. Now what if in the second rak'ah you forgot to sit down for it? Do you go back for the sunnah? No, you don't. Does that make sense? No, you don't. You might even invalidate your whole salah because you're going back for a sunnah and not a farz. And this is salah, not wudu. Does that make sense? This is salah, not wudu. This is salah and not wudu. Remember the difference between wudu and salah. Wudu is a prerequisite. One of the conditions of fulfilling your salah, you need to do wudu. But the salah is the main deed. So you have to be really careful on how you do it, inshallah. And then, والثامنة الجلوس الأول للزائد على قدر السلام من الجلوس الثاني. You have to sit down long enough. Is that your phone? Okay. Yeah. You have to sit down enough as if you are doing for the for the second rak'ah, you sit enough for that period which you are going to say salam. Now, do they mention that you have to say at-tahiyyatu lillah in the sunnah? No. It's not a sunnah now. Mentioning at-tahiyyatu lillah, zakiyatu lillah, all of those are fadila. Because the question would be, if I have to sit down in the last rak'ah and the second rak'ah, enough as if I'm sitting for the last rak'ah for doing salam, then do I just sit down? Or is it because I have to do the dua that I have to read at-tahiyyatu lillah? You have to sit down. Even if you don't know it, you can't recite it, you have to sit enough. It's as if you recited it. So a new Muslim that embraces Islam, of course they've embraced Islam, for example, just today. They haven't memorized any of this, but they know perhaps the mechanisms of salah. They just sit enough for that little period to know, okay, it's as if I've recited what was needed even though I did not recite it. Does that make sense? And their salah is valid. And remember, this is among the sunnah of salah. Then it poses the question, if I have to sit and it's a sunnah, does that mean if I stand as well, my salah is valid? For that period when I sit down for at-tahiyyatu lillah, if I stand up, is my salah valid? Think carefully. We said sitting is a sunnah. But if I stand up, is my salah valid or invalid? It's valid. But what have you done? You have not reduced, you have invalid, yes, made a mistake. Barakallahu feek. As you've made a mistake, then there's a penalty for it. We're going to mention that. That's the reason why I want to finish that. I want to finish this. And he says, now number 9 is رَدُّ الْمُقْتَدِي عَلَى إِمَامِهِ السَّلَامِ. The one who is being led, the muqtadi, the ma'moom, to return his salam to the imam. Does that make sense? If you do the first salam is not a sunnah, it's a fard. Assalamu alaikum. Now when do you say the second salam? The second salam, you say it to the imam. But then, they don't mention it here. It's in the hashiyah. When do you say the salam to the imam? if you're praying in the other hall and the Imam is here, you can't see the Imam, don't look at the screen and tell the Imam, Assalamu alaikum. No, don't do that. Just know the Imam is not in front of you, so you're not required to say it. But what if you're in the first line, second line, and third line? You can directly see the Imam. You can directly see the Imam. You say salam to the Imam as well. So you look directly to the Imam and you say salam. Does that make sense? And then وَكَذَلِكَ رَدُّهُ عَلَى مَنْ عَلَى يَسَارِهِ إِنْ كَانَ عَلى يَسَارِ أَحَدٍ. Then he would say salam to the one who is on his left, if there is anyone on his left. Now, according to the other madhahib, they provide that you do the first salam, which is fard, and the second salam is sunnah. أليس كذلك? For us, the second salam is sunnah if you have the imam right in front of you. But what about if you have another brother of yours that you're praying with on your side? The ulama, they've differed on this. Some say no, it's not a sunnah actually. It's a fadila. It's lower than a sunnah. Does that make sense? So if it's not a sunnah and it's a fadila, even if you don't do it, your salah is okay. And there's no penalty for it. What about this sunnah? If you have an imam, you do it. But if you miss it, you should be fine. Does that make sense? However, in the madhab, if you're praying alone now, are you required to do the other sunnah? No, you're not. Salam is only one. According to the madhab of Malik, salam is only one. They do not recognize the fadh, the one who is praying alone, to do the rest. Shaykh Abdalla, if you want to leave, you can leave, inshallah. You get what I mean? They do not recognize that you do the other salams. Only if you're in a position such as you're either being led, or you're being led and you have someone in your side. Does that make sense? And that is this 10th sunnah. And the last one is that the 11th one, which he provides here. Does he look at the 12th one? Yeah. He said that as-sutratu lil-imami wal-fadh, and in khashya an yamurra ahadun bayna yadayhi. Now, when it comes to the sutra, we'll come back to that inshallah in our next class, so we can finish this all the way to the end of the meritorious deeds. But what I wanted to bring to your attention is the issue of what do you do if you miss a sunnah? What do you do if you miss a sunnah? You have to do sujood al-sahw. And sujood al-sahw, forgetfulness sujood, there's two types: before salam and after salam. If you miss a sunnah, have you added in salah or have you reduced in salah? You reduced in salah. So any reduction in salah, you do sujood before salam. Does that make sense? Any addition in salah, you do sujood after salam. I'll repeat this again. Any reduction in salah, you do sujood before salam. Any addition in salah, you do sujood after salam. But not any reduction. If you miss a fadila, one fadila or two fadila, then you do not do sujood al-sahw. Otherwise, you might even invalidate the whole salah because you added in salah a fadila. What about a sunnah? The sunnahs are so connected together that if you miss one, you've missed three. Now bringing you back to the surah. The surah has to be recited after Fatiha. And it has its own method of reciting it, which is either loud or silently. That's number 2. Number 3, you have to recite it standing. Does that make sense? But this standing we're talking about is for the fard prayer. Listen to me carefully. Not the sunnah prayer. The sunnah prayer, you can pray it sitting. Is that very clear? You can pray your sunnah praying sitting. So you don't worry about the sunnah now. You worry about the faridah. The faridah that you have. As you pray it you pray it standing. As you pray your faridah, you must recite it, the surah. You must either do it silently or out loud. And 3, you must stand for it. لِلْقَادِرِ عَلَى الْقِيَامِ, for the one who is capable of standing. But if a person is in a position where they're left, they cannot stand, then they have to recite it in the position they're in. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Inshallah. So remember, when you have to do sujood al-sahw, in this case, you have not just reduced or missed one sunnah, you've actually missed 3 sunnahs. Mathalan now, you forgot to sit down for the tashahhud on the second rak'ah. you've missed two things. You've missed the sitting, you've missed the length of the sitting, and also you've missed a meritorious deed, which is reciting at-tahiyyatu lillah. How many things have you missed? 3 again. So what happens now, doing that sujood al-sahw, should you do it or should you not? You must do it. Understood? You must do it. Otherwise your salah becomes invalid. And we'll stop there, inshallah. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, baraka Muhammad wa ala ashabihi ajma'in. Does anyone have questions? I would be fascinated if you guys don't have questions, because I would love it. Yes? Yeah, one first. Don't forget your question. You had a question as well. Yes?
I know, I'm just saying, you know when you are talking about sunnah, I think we call it wajibas.
Call it?
Wajibas. So there's that, see, we've got 3
Wajib.
Yeah, wajib.
Wajib. In the Hanafi madhab, is true. They differentiate between a fard and a wajib. In the rest of the other madhahib, there's no difference between fard and wajib, except in the Maliki madhab, as I know, I can't talk for the rest of the other madhahib, only in Hajj. There's a difference between fard, which is known as rukn, and a wajib. Because if you miss the rukn, which is the fard, your entire Hajj is invalid. If you miss a wajib, then you're required to pay a penalty for it. Understood? There's a fidya for it, and which is slaughtering. It depends on what you've done. Depends on the type of mistake you've done in your I forgot the actual term that we use constantly. So what you've missed, or maybe what you've done in the process of Hajj itself. Does that make sense?
I mentioned that because in Nafi, if you miss a sunnah, you don't have to do such this. So it's the wajib. They classify.
But in the madhab, as far as I know, in the Hanafi madhab, the sunnah that you do before salah and after salah, they are wajib.
Those you mentioned, they're classified as wajib.
Wajib, yes. And if you miss a sunnah, all of the 12 sunnahs every day as a Hanafi, you are a big problem.
Now these are wajibs. We classify them as wajibs. The ones you just mentioned.
There's a brother Miskin who got married. He's an Arab brother. MashaAllah, he married a Bangladeshi woman. Now when he went to his father-in-law, he only did the fard. He didn't do the sunnah. The father is a hardcore Hanafi. He commanded him, stand up and pray your sunnah. Now the brother can't really stand for himself. Why? Qillatul ilm. He doesn't have enough knowledge. Where he grew up from, he's a Shafi'i. If you do not do the sunnah, it doesn't mean anything, that you've missed out. Although it's recommended, highly recommended you do so. Does that make sense? He came to me and telling me, I'm attacked by my father-in-law. My religion has a problem. I told him, you're a miskin. You're a poor man. And mashallah, he has enough wealth. But then I told him, you're a poor man. You know why? Because he didn't want to study enough. Now do this. When you go again, make these issues clear. Your madhab is this, his madhab is this, your understanding is this, and this is the reason why you don't have to do it. Perhaps you'll understand. I didn't see that brother anymore until today. I believe he's still in honeymoon. And I mean, yes, you two are together, so who's going to go first? You want to go first? You want him to go first? Yes, Adam. And then 2 minutes. There's no one here anyway. And we're not in a country where people will hear outside. Now, Sidi, what's your question?
No, I think what's going to make, maybe we spoke about this before, but the asl in reciting, is it loud or is it sirra? So by that I mean a salah that's not wajib. So I'm praying qiyam al-layl, I'm praying rak'ah ba'da and isha. Should that be out loud? Or should
The asl is depending on the time of the prayer. وَجْهَرْ بِنَفْلِ اللَّيْلِ طُعَةَ الْقُرْبَةِ وَفِي النَّهَارِ السِّرُّ لَا ذِي الْخُطْبَةِ. If you're praying night prayers, they're loud. Day prayers, they're silent. وهكذا. Does that make sense? وَجْهَرْ day from the beginning of Dhuhr all the way to Maghrib.
So
why do Salatul Fajr, why do we make it out loud? Because it's still dark. Duha is silent, it's day already. Yeah. Does that make sense? The moment Ishraq, the moment there's Ishraq, sunrise, it's day now. All of those salah from sunrise all the way to sunset, Maghrib, those are quiet. And then from Maghrib all the way to sunrise, not even Fajr, sunrise, they're all what? Loud. So even if you're doing Qiyamul Layl, loud. That make sense? Now.
If you were to miss the first rak'ah of Fajr, you're up, so if the Imam says salam, you get up and now you're carrying, so you do your second rak'ah.
Yeah.
Should that now be loud?
Loud, yes.
As a part of
Yes, loud, yeah. Loud, yeah, inshallah. You have to do it loud. But as we said, there are levels. You're in the masjid, other people, and early morning, it's very quiet. So you don't have to read out loud. And we've heard some brothers, mashallah, they're very enthusiastic, they love praying. If they miss a rak'ah and they're praying on their own, mashallah, they are louder than the speaker. Okay, so what you do is, the levels of being loud. The loudest is when your voice is at this level. The lowest, if you have to read out loud, is the highest of when you recite silently. Does that make sense? We can do adhan now. You have a question? Then we'll call it a last question. Yes.
When you say, the fard of salah, when the imam is on ruku,
Yeah.
and then you come join ruku, you got the rak'ah, you don't reach the Fatah, and even though when you say you stand up, you don't reach the Fatah, you get the rak'ah. In Bab, Nauman, if you miss the Fatah, you miss the rak'ah.
Yeah, I don't know about the Ibadi madhab, to be honest. Haven't studied it. But according to the madhahib, Hanafi, Hanbali, Shafi'i, the Maliki as well, all of these madhahib, they agree on the fact that as you see where the imam is, that's how you follow the imam. Okay, there are recommendations and aqwal in the madhahib as well, and you recite the Fatiha, but the strongest of opinion is impossible to read the Fatiha. You follow where the imam is.
So why didn't the imam wait for you where the Fatah is found in salah? You have
For the imam.
Well,
No, we said for the imam. Because remember, in this case now, according to the madhab, if we come back to this to the Maliki madhab, you do not have to recite the Fatiha. So as you find the imam in ruku', your duty is to follow the imam and not focus on the Fatiha. You do not recite the Fatiha while the imam recites it. Does that make sense? As a ma'moom, your leader is the imam. Question is, if Allah today blesses us with a leader, with an imam, when I say imam, you understand what I mean, not imam of salah, imam of the ummah. Do we question the decisions that he makes? Unless he is doing something with kufr bawah. Kufr bawah is clear-cut kufr. But once the imam is there to lead the ummah, we follow and obey. أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم سمعنا وأطعنا. Isn't it? لذلك, if you look at that stance, according to what we learn from the hadith as well, you notice that what the imam, and this is deduced as well in the madhab, the imam as the imam is the one who takes the burden of the ma'mum. And in that case, the ma'mum is not required to do what if they would have been required to do on their own, because it's the burden of the imam. Say alhamdulillah, at least the imam is the one that was going to take the bashing, not you. We need to do adhan, Sidi.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
I don't think you will. Think about it. You can't mess around. This is a job. Shatter and then start to open up the paper. I've never seen this.